Friday, January 26, Further Thought. If you have the opportunity, you might like to read the chapter The Night of Wrestling on pages 195 to 203 in Patriarchs and Prophets. What can we learn from Jacob's experience about the power of importunate prayer and unreserved trust in God? The Psalms strengthen our faith in God, who is the never-failing refuge for those who entrust their lives into His mighty hands. God will do great things for those who trust Him, Ellen White writes in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 493. The reason why His professed people have no greater strength is that they trust so much in their own wisdom and do not give the Lord an opportunity to reveal His power in their behalf. He will help His believing children in every emergency if they will place their entire confidence in Him and faithfully obey Him. End of quote. Yet some psalms can pose a serious challenge when what they promise and our current situation do not match. At times such as this, we just have to learn to trust in the goodness of God, most powerfully revealed at the cross. Also, at times, some psalms can be used to foster false hopes. Jesus' response to Satan's corrupted use of Psalm 91 verses 11 and 12 shows that trusting God must not be confused with tempting God, as we read in Matthew 4, 5 and 7, or presumptuously asking God to do something that is contrary to His will. Let's read Psalm 91 verses 11 and 12 and then see how Jesus uses it. For He shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And then Matthew 4, verses 5 to 7. Then the devil took him up into the holy city, set him on a pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He shall give His angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, It is written again, You shall not tempt the Lord your God. The greatest victories to the Church of Christ or to the individual Christians are not those who are gained by talent or education, by wealth or the favour of men, Ellen White writes in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 203. They are those victories that are gained in the audience chamber with God, when earnest, agonizing faith lays hold upon the mighty arm of power. End of quote. And that brings us to our two discussion questions for this week. 1. In class, discuss the answer to the last question in Tuesday's study about trusting in God amid adversity and when things go terribly wrong. How does one understand these things and how they could happen to people, even with all the wonderful promises in the Psalms about God's protection? Think about this too. Did not the psalmist, who wrote about these wonderful promises, suffer adversity or know of faithful people who did as well? And 2, how can we develop unreserved trust in God in all circumstances? And there are some texts here for us to check. The first is Psalm 91, verse 14, Because He has set His love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. And Psalm 143, verses 8, Cause me to hear your loving kindness in the morning, for in you do I trust. Cause me to know the way in which I should walk, for I lift up my soul to you. And verse 10, Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Your spirit is good. Lead me in the land of uprightness. And then Psalm 145, verses 18 to 20. The Lord is near to all who call upon Him, to all who call upon Him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear Him. He also will hear their cry and save them. The Lord preserves all who love Him, but all the wicked He will destroy. What can cause us to lose this confidence? Why is trust in God in good times crucial for learning to trust Him in bad times as well? And now it's time for Inside Story with Sibylla Harrold. Thank you, Sibylla.
Prayer Answered in Perth by Joe Paola. Margaret and her husband, Levana, were sitting one morning in their living room in Perth, Australia, after returning the previous night from a trip to Papua New Guinea, located some 2,000 miles or 4,500 kilometres away. Margaret was reflecting quietly on her father's parting words at the airport. After praying with her, he had said, "Margaret, Jesus is coming back very soon. When you arrive at your home in Perth, my God will be at your door the next day." Not far from Margaret and Levana's home, literature evangelist Joe Lang and several friends were praying at a Seventh-day Adventist church. They were praying for divine appointments as they prepared to head out for a day of canvassing. A couple of hours later, Joe knocked on the door of Margaret and Levana's home. The home looked no different from the other houses on the street. Levana opened the door and politely looked through the cookbook that Joe showed him, but he didn't express any real interest in the book. Then Joe gave him a copy of Ellen White's The Great Controversy and began telling him about it. Levana flipped through the several pages and called to his wife. "Do we have this book?" he asked. Margaret came to the door and confirmed that they did have the book. She turned to Joe and explained that she was a former Seventh-day Adventist. The words tumbled from her mouth. "We just came home from Papua New Guinea last night," she said. "The last thing that my dad said to me was that he would be praying for God to show up at my house." It was a hot day in Perth, approximately 109.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 43 degrees Celsius. But Joe felt goosebumps on her arms. She and Margaret looked at each other with big smiles and marvelled at how God had answered the prayer of Margaret's father. "Wouldn't it be great if I could come to your church and share this story?" Margaret said. "It would," Joe agreed, and the two exchanged phone numbers. A few weeks later, Margaret stood with tears in her eyes at Bickley Seventh-day Adventist Church and told her story of how God had found a lost straying lamb. God used a woman with a copy of The Great Controversy in Australia to answer a father's passionate prayer in Papua New Guinea. Join the Seventh-day Adventist World Church in the mass promotion and distribution of The Great Controversy in 2023 and 2024. Visit greatcontroversyproject.org for more information or ask your pastor.
This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.